You know that feeling. It usually happens late at night. You're standing outside, maybe taking out the trash or, just getting a breath of cold air.
Right.
And you happen to look up at the night sky. It's vast. It's incredibly dark. And suddenly, this crushing weight just drops right into your stomach.
Yeah, that profound sort of vertigo.
Exactly. You look at those distant, glittering points of light, and you think about the billions of light years of freezing, empty vacuum between them. And the thought just echoes in your head like, I am absolutely nothing.
It's that universal, deeply modern feeling of cosmic smallness.
Yes. We live in an age where looking at the stars, or honestly, just scrolling through the daily news on your phone can make you feel like a completely meaningless speck in a cold, dead, mechanical universe.
And it is entirely understandable why you would feel that way. I mean, we have been culturally conditioned from a very young age by a specific scientific paradigm.
Right, the whole universe is a machine thing.
Exactly. It's been a highly successful paradigm for building technology, sure. But we're taught that the universe is eventually a giant, indifferent clockwork machine. And in that machine, you, the observer, are nothing more than a biological accident.
Just a highly complex arrangement of atoms.
Right. Atoms that happened to bump into each other in a warm puddle a few billion years ago. And eventually, that led to a brain that is now, unfortunately, smart enough to realize its own insignificance.
And that exact feeling, that detachment, that pervasive existential nihilism, it's not just some late-night philosophical musing.
No, not at all.
For most people, it is actively fueling a massive epidemic of depression and anxiety. I mean, when you truly fundamentally believe that you are just an isolated meat computer trapped inside a dark skull.
A glitch in the system.
Yeah, and that nothing you do matters in the grand scheme of a decaying cosmos. It becomes incredibly hard to get out of bed in the morning. Like, why bother? It feels like the universe is happening to you and you have zero agency.
The psychological toll of that materialist worldview is immense. If the baseline of reality is cold, dead matter, and your consciousness is just a temporary, meaningless glitch, then anxiety is almost a logical response to your environment.
Because you're just an isolated fragment in a hostile, silent void.
Right. It's a terrifying way to orient yourself in the world.
But what if that entire premise is mathematically wrong?
Well, that's what we're looking at today.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the source material we are looking at today attempts to completely shatter that cold, mechanical worldview. We have a groundbreaking 2025 paper from the journal AIP Advances.
Written by physicist Maria Strum.
Yes. It's titled Universal Consciousness as Foundational Field, a theoretical bridge between quantum physics and non-dual philosophy. And the mission of our deep dive today is to explore this exact mathematical and physical framework.
Because if this paper is right, everything you feel about your own insignificance is, well, mathematically incorrect.
Which is just a wild statement to make. We're going to explore what happens when you assume consciousness isn't a random, emergent accident of brain chemistry, but the very foundational fabric of the universe itself.
And what makes Strumme's paper so compelling is that it is not just another philosophical speculation. It's not a mystical treatise.
Right. There's actual math here.
Tons of it. It's a rigorous attempt to map ancient, profound metaphysical concepts directly onto the mathematics of modern quantum field theory and cosmology.
She is actively attempting to bridge that historical divide. The one between materialist science, which insists that matter creates consciousness, and non-dual philosophies, which have argued for millennia that consciousness creates matter.
Let's start right there, in the contrast between those two views.
Okay. On one side, we have the standard materialist scientific view. This is the biology class standard. The brain fires neurons, and consciousness emerges as a byproduct.
But the paper points out that metaphysical traditions like Advaita Vedanta in Hinduism or certain schools of Buddhist philosophy have always seen it the exact opposite way.
They treat consciousness as the primary universal foundation of existence.
Yes. In Advaita Vedanta, for instance, you have the concept of Brahman, the ultimate undivided reality from which all physical manifestations arise.
And in Buddhism,
You have the concept of shunyata. It's usually translated as emptiness, but that translation is highly misleading. It isn't a dead void.
right, it's not just nothingness.
Exactly. It's a formless domain that is deeply interconnected with all form. It's pregnant with infinite potential. These traditions have always maintained that the universe isn't a collection of separate objects sitting in an empty box.
It's a single, unified field of awareness. And it isn't just ancient mystics who thought this, right?
Yeah.
The paper brings up early quantum physicists who are saying the exact same thing.
Erwin Schrödinger is the prime example here.
The guy with the cat in the box.
The very same. In his later writings, particularly in his book What is Life, Schrödinger argued forcefully that consciousness is singular and indivisible.
Wait, singular? As in, there's only one?
Yes. He looked at the implications of quantum mechanics and concluded that there isn't a multitude of individual consciousnesses scattered across the universe. There is only one universal consciousness, appearing to be many through the illusion of separate biological vessels.
The challenge, though, has always been how to prove that. I mean, how do you map ancient mysticism or Schrödinger's philosophical musings onto modern rigorous physics?
And that is where the paper introduces a framework called the three principles, or the three Ps.
Right, originally articulated by a 20th century philosopher named Sydney Banks.
Yes. The paper uses these three principles as the scaffolding to build its mathematical model. Let's walk through them. They are mind, consciousness, and thought.
But we need to clarify these terms because they absolutely do not mean what a modern English speaker thinks they mean.
Not at all. In Banks's framework, which Strømme mathematically models, these are formless, eternal principles existing before space, time, and physical matter.
Okay, let's start with mind, because I immediately think of my brain trying to remember where I left my keys.
Yeah, that's not it. This is not your personal intellect. It is not the thing you use to solve a math problem. It is the universal creative intelligence.
The universal creative intelligence.
It is the raw, unmanifested source of all potential. It's the metaphysical energy from which all structure eventually arises.
This is just pure, raw, infinite potential. Got it.
Right. Then we have consciousness, and again, abandon the idea of your personal waking state.
It's not me realizing I'm hungry.
Exactly. Universal consciousness in this model is the foundational field. It is the universal capacity for awareness. Think of it as the underlying fabric or substrate through which any potential can actually be realized and, crucially, perceived.
Okay, so mind is the potential, consciousness is the field it happens in, and the third principle is thought.
Right. Thought is the creative mechanism. It is the active catalyst.
Catalyst for what?
It takes the formless potential of the mind, operates within the field of consciousness, and forces it to transform into structured, subjective realities.
The engine of differentiation.
Exactly. It is what turns everything that could be into this specific thing that is.
Okay, let me try an analogy here to ground this, because those terms are incredibly heavy.
Sure, go ahead.
In standard science, we treat consciousness like the heat coming off a car engine. The moving parts of the brain are the engine, and the heat, the consciousness, is just a byproduct.
It doesn't drive the car, it just dissipates into the air.
Right. But this paper argues that consciousness isn't the heat. According to these three principles, mind is the gasoline, the pure potential energy sitting in the tank.
Okay, I'm following.
Consciousness is the actual physical environment, the road, the spatial dimensions where movement is even possible. And thought is the engine and the steering wheel, actively converting that potential energy into forward motion, into a specific, localized journey. Does that track?
It's a solid starting point, but I might push back slightly on the mechanical nature of it, because a car is still a collection of separate parts.
Fair enough. What's a better way to visualize it?
A better way might be acoustic. Imagine a vast, silent, infinite auditorium.
Okay, infinite auditorium.
The mind is the physical capacity of the air in that room to carry sound, the pure potential for vibration. Consciousness is the air itself, the medium through which the sound will travel.
And thought.
Thought is the striking of a tuning fork. It is the active, creative impulse that takes that silent potential and forces the medium to vibrate at a specific frequency, creating a structured, perceivable note.
Oh, I like that much better. It feels way more integrated.
Yeah.
And the psychological implication of this shift is massive.
Oh, so?
Well, if you think you are the heat coming off the engine, you have no agency. You are just a fleeting accident that vanishes. But if this acoustic model is right, you are the resonance of the universe itself.
That is the core reframe for someone struggling with existential dread. Feeling like an isolated brain trapped in a skull naturally leads to anxiety because you're fundamentally disconnected from the universe.
You're an alien in a mechanical world.
Exactly. But by modeling reality through the three Ps, we move from a universe of things to a universe of awareness. The The very source of your mind is not a glitchy lump of biological meat.
The source of your mind is a universal, eternal intelligence.
You are a specific note being played by the foundational fabric of reality.
To look in the mirror and realize the awareness looking back at you is the exact same fundamental field that holds the galaxies together. I mean, it completely destroys the concept of being insignificant.
It really does.
But let's get into the physics here, because the paper doesn't just leave this as a nice, comforting philosophical metaphor. It dives into the math of how this universe-spanning awareness existed before the universe even began.
Let's talk about the pre-Big Bang state.
Yeah, the paper introduces a mathematical symbol for this, right? It's the ket of phi 0.
Yes. In Dirac notation, which is standard in quantum mechanics, that bracket, the ket, denotes a specific quantum state. Here, phi 0 represents the timeless, perfectly symmetrical, undifferentiated state of universal consciousness.
This is reality before the Big Bang.
Before there was space, before there was time, before there was any physical matter or energy as we know it.
Okay, I have to stop you there, because saying before time breaks the human brain. I mean, how do you mathematically describe a state of reality that doesn't have a ticking clock? How can anything exist if time isn't passing?
We describe it using the concept of quantum superposition.
Okay, break that down for me.
In our normal, localized experience, things happen sequentially. A causes B, which causes C. That requires time.
Right, cause and effect.
But in quantum mechanics, before a measurement is made, a system exists in a superposition of all possible states simultaneously. The paper defines phi 0 mathematically as the sum of all possible differentiated states.
The equation is phi 0 equals the sum of C sub k times phi sub k.
Let's break that equation down so we really understand it.
Yeah, what do these variables actually mean?
Phi 0 is the whole, the infinite potential. The sigma symbol represents the summation of all possibilities.
And what are we summing up?
We are summing up all the phi sub k states. These are all the specific differentiated realities that could exist. Every possible configuration of space, time, matter, energy, and individual subjective experience.
Every possible universe.
Every possible moment, every possible thought you could ever have.
So absolutely everything that could ever possibly happen.
Everything. And the C sub k terms in front of them are complex coefficients.
What do those do?
You can think of them as probability amplitudes. They determine the mathematical weight or likelihood of any specific reality emerging from the potential.
Okay, I'm tracking.
But here is the critical part to grasp. In this pre-Big Bang state, none of these specific realities have been selected. They all exist simultaneously, suspended as pure, unmanifested potential.
Because there is no time.
Exactly, because there is no sequence of events. All possibilities coexist in an eternal, silent now.
If the baseline of reality isn't nothingness, but rather pure potential, how does that change our view of empty space? I mean, when we look out into the vacuum of space, or honestly, when we experience a profound feeling of emptiness in our own lives, like in a deep depression, we usually interpret that as a negative.
A lack of something.
Right. We feel detached because we think we are surrounded by a cold, uncaring, dead void.
And that is a core driver of detachment. But according to this framework, and actually according to quantum field theory itself, the void is actually deeply, intensely alive.
Alive how?
Modern physics tells us that the quantum vacuum is not empty. It's a seething, boiling sea of potential energy and virtual particles popping in and out of existence.
Oh, wow.
In Ström's model, this void is the unified source of everything. It is universal consciousness in its resting state, phi 0, carrying infinite potential. It is not an absence.
It is an absolute overwhelming fullness that just hasn't taken a specific shape yet.
Exactly.
So if the void is actually this infinite, timeless superposition of everything that could ever be, how do we get from that eternal silent stillness to, well, to this?
To reality.
Yeah, to you and me talking, to traffic jams, to stars exploding. How do we get structured reality? The paper states this transition is initiated by something called universal thought.
The paper introduces universal thought as a mathematical operator, represented by the symbol T with a hat on it.
What's an operator in this context?
In quantum mechanics, an operator is a mathematical function that acts on a state to produce a new state. It forces a transformation.
Okay, so it forces a change.
Here, universal thought is the creative mechanism that acts on that undifferentiated state, phi 0, and forces it to collapse into specific, structured realities.
I'm going to push back here, because calling it universal thought sounds, well, highly unscientific.
I get that.
It sounds like we're saying the universe is an old man with a beard who literally decided to think a thought, and poof, galaxies appeared. Are we just anthropomorphizing the cosmos?
Hmm.
Because that feels like a massive leap from quantum equations.
It's a very valid concern, and it is exactly where materialist scientists often bristle when encountering non-dual language. But the paper is extremely careful to clarify this.
Okay, how so?
Universal thought is not a personal intellectual thinking process. It does not involve a central nervous system weighing pros and cons or having an opinion.
So it's not like me trying to decide what to have for dinner.
Not at all. Instead, think of it as a fundamental active process of revelation or measurement. In standard quantum mechanics, a wave function, which is a superposition of possibilities, collapses into a single, definite reality only when an observation or measurement is made.
The famous observer effect.
Right.
Like the double slit experiment, where a particle exists as a wave of probability until you put a detector next to it, and the mere act of measuring it forces it to become a solid particle.
Exactly. Ström's framework maps Banks' principle of thought directly onto that quantum collapse. Universal thought is the metaphysical equivalent of that fundamental observation.
So it's the formless creative force of the universe realizing itself.
Yes, it is the active transition from what could be to what is. It doesn't have an ego, it is simply the physics of actualization.
Okay, so how exactly does this operator, this T-hat, actually do the collapsing? The paper details 3 specific, mathematically distinct physical mechanisms for how this infinite consciousness differentiates into the physical universe.
Yes, it does.
Can we walk through them? But let's start with the first one, spontaneous symmetry breaking.
This is a beautiful concept borrowed directly from particle physics and cosmology. Let's use a physical analogy.
Okay, I love analogies.
Imagine a perfectly smooth, symmetrical dome, like the top of a sphere. If you place a marble exactly at the dead center, at the very peak of the dome, it is perfectly balanced.
It has perfect symmetry.
You can look at it from any angle, and it looks exactly the same. This represents our phi-zero state. Pure, balanced, undifferentiated potential.
But it's an unstable equilibrium, right?
Exactly. The absolute slightest nudge, the tiniest perturbation, will cause the marble to roll down the side of the dome into the valley below.
And once it rolls down, it picks a specific path. It might roll south or east. It is no longer perfectly symmetrical.
It has, in a sense, made a choice. That is spontaneous symmetry breaking.
How does the paper model this mathematically?
They use a potential function. They use an equation for what is known as a double well potential. I know that sounds dense, but what this equation actually describes is exactly that dome shape with valleys around it.
So universal thought is the nudge.
Yes. Universal thought introduces that initial microscopic perturbation that causes the consciousness field to shift away from its perfect, formless balance and fall into a specific, structured state.
The paper mentions that the parameter lambda in that equation controls the intensity of this differentiation. Could you explain what lambda represents physically?
Think of lambda as the tension of a stretched rubber band. It controls the steepness of those valleys in our dome analogy.
Okay, so a high lambda means what?
If lambda is a very large number, the drop-off is incredibly steep. When the symmetry breaks, the snap is sudden and violent.
Like the Big Bang.
Akin to the explosive phase transitions in the early universe just after the Big Bang, where fundamental forces split apart rapidly. But if lambda is small, the transition is smooth and gradual.
What's fascinating here is that this provides a rigorous physics parallel to a metaphysical concept. It mathematically models the mind's inherent creative force pulling form at a formlessness.
And crucially, the equation has a built-in mathematical resistance to change when the state is close to perfect symmetry.
A sort of metaphysical inertia.
Exactly, a metaphysical inertia that preserves unity until the creative force of thought initiates the break.
That is the first mechanism. The second one proposed by the paper for how structure arises is quantum fluctuations. How does that differ from symmetry breaking?
Well, even in a perfect vacuum, at absolute zero temperature where all thermal movement stops, quantum mechanics tells us there is no such thing as complete stillness.
Right, because of the uncertainty principle.
Exactly. The uncertainty principle dictates that there are always microscopic random variations in the energy field. Virtual particles pop in and out of existence.
These are quantum fluctuations.
Yes. In the mathematical model, the paper represents these as inherent, spontaneous deviations from perfect symmetry happening within the consciousness field itself.
So in this scenario, universal thought isn't a deliberate nudge pushing the marble off the dome. Rather, the field itself is inherently jittery, inherently creative, and those tiny random jitters are the seeds of reality.
Yes, this mirrors standard cosmological models of inflation. In the fractions of a second after the Big Bang, the universe expanded exponentially.
And those microscopic quantum fluctuations, those tiny jitters, were stretched out across the cosmos.
Right. The slightly denser areas of the jitter eventually pulled in more matter via gravity and became the seeds for entire galaxy clusters.
So in Ström's framework, these stochastic random variations are the inherent, restless creativity of universal thought manifesting. The potential cannot remain dormant.
It naturally fluctuates, transforming uniformity into complexity.
And then there's the third mechanism, which I think is the most mind-bending.
Self-reflection or creative emergence.
Yes, the paper models this via projection operators. What is a projection operator and how does it create reality?
A projection operator in linear algebra and quantum mechanics essentially filters a state, projecting it onto a specific subspace.
Like casting a shadow.
Think of shining a flashlight at a complex 3D object to cast a 2D shadow on the wall. The operator forces the complex state into a specific reduced manifestation.
This mechanism touches deeply on the work of physicist John Archibald Wheeler, right? His idea of the participatory universe.
Exactly. Wheeler was the one who drew that famous diagram of the universe as a giant U with an eye at one end, looking back at itself.
Right.
In this third mechanism, differentiation doesn't happen through a mechanical fall from symmetry or a random quantum jitter. It happens through introspection.
Wait, introspection. The universe introspects.
Universal consciousness becomes aware of itself. It looks at its own infinite potential, and that very introspective observation acts as the projection operator.
The act of awareness selects later possibilities from the superposition and projects them into actuality.
Yes.
It's like looking in a mirror to figure out who you are, but the sheer act of looking actually creates the face staring back at you.
That is a brilliant way to put it. The universe observes itself into being.
If we pull this back to the listener, I mean, think about what this means for the feeling of your life being inconsequential.
It's huge.
When you are deeply depressed or totally checked out, you feel like your daily routine, waking up, making coffee, commuting, doing your job, is entirely pointless.
Yeah.
You feel like a passive receiver of a reality that is just happening to you.
And you are just suffering through it.
But if this third mechanism is true, if the universe creates structure through self-reflection and observation, then the act of experiencing is the fundamental driver of reality.
It completely inverts the narrative of nihilism. Your daily activity, your moment-to-moment observation of your life is not inconsequential. It is the microscopic, localized version of the exact same mechanism that birthed the cosmos.
By observing your life, by making choices, by simply being aware, you are actively participating in the collapse of the universal wave function.
You are not a passive audience member sitting in the back row of the theater of reality. You are the projector light.
Wow. Okay, so we've established the mechanisms. The infinite field has collapsed, symmetry is broken, the wave function is actualized. Now we have a physical universe.
Right.
Let's move to how exactly space, time, and we fit into this. Because the paper argues that space and time are not a pre-existing box that the universe was poured into.
This is a vital point in modern physics that Strömme leverages heavily. Space and time are emergent properties. They don't exist independent of the field. They are generated by it.
After the initial collapse, the consciousness field evolves.
And the paper models this evolution using what is called the D'Alembert operator, mathematically represented by a little square symbol.
Okay, what is the D'Alembert operator? Explain it to me like I don't have a PhD in physics.
Okay, simply put, it is the mathematical rule that governs how waves propagate or travel through a medium.
Like dropping a stone in a pond.
Exactly. If you drop a stone in a pond, the D'Alembert operator describes exactly how those ripples spread outwards across the surface of the water over time.
So how does that apply to consciousness?
By applying this specific operator to the consciousness field, the paper is showing how the perturbations in this field, the structures, the energies created by universal thought, actually weave the fabric of space-time as they propagate.
Space-time is the geometry of consciousness interacting with itself.
Exactly.
Okay, so the consciousness field is rippling, weaving space and time as it goes. Where do I come in? Where do human beings or sentient life fit into this math? I mean, if I'm not a meat computer, what am I?
This is where we introduce the state of individual consciousness. As the universal field evolves and propagates, localized excitations form within it.
Localized excitations. Okay, what does that mean in plain English?
Imagine a vast, vibrating acoustic field. In certain regions, the vibrations overlap and bundle up, forming a stable, localized, self-sustaining pattern. In standard quantum field theory, a localized excitation in the electromagnetic field is what we call a photon.
And a localized excitation in the electron field is an electron.
Right.
And what is a localized excitation in the universal consciousness field?
It is a sentient being. It is you. You with your distinct personality, your memories, your individual awareness are a stable, localized ripple in the universal consciousness field.
I want to make sure I'm visualizing this correctly. A common analogy in these philosophies is that I'm a whirlpool in the ocean. I have a distinct shape. You can point at me and say there is a whirlpool, but fundamentally I'm made of the exact same water as the calm surface.
That's a classic analogy.
But earlier you pushed back on mechanical analogies. Is there a better physical way to imagine this localized excitation?
The whirlpool is decent, but a better, more physically accurate analogy might be a standing wave or a somatic pattern.
Somatic pattern.
Have you ever seen those videos where they place sand on a metal plate and vibrate the plate at a specific frequency?
Oh yeah, and the sand suddenly organizes into those incredibly complex, beautiful, distinct geometric patterns.
Exactly. The pattern seems solid, it has a distinct shape and boundary, but it is entirely an emergent property of the continuous vibration of the plate beneath it.
And if you turn off the vibration, the pattern vanishes back into scattered sand.
You are the cymatic pattern. The universal consciousness field is the vibrating plate.
That is incredible. I have a shape, I have an identity, but I'm entirely sustained by the underlying frequency of the universe. And this aligns with what the paper mentions about the holographic principle, right?
Yes, and David Bohm's concept of the implicate order.
Who is David Bohm?
A brilliant theoretical physicist. He suggested that beneath the seemingly separate objects of our everyday world, which he called the explicate order, there is a deeper, unified reality, the implicate order.
And in the implicate order, everything is enfolded into everything else.
Like a hologram, where every tiny piece of the holographic film contains the entire image. As a localized excitation, you are differentiated. You have a boundary, an ego, a specific viewpoint.
But beneath that localized structure, I remain entirely, irrevocably entangled with the universal field.
You contain the whole within the part.
This directly addresses that feeling of cosmic smallness. If you are listening to this, and you look at the stars tonight and you feel tiny, you have to remember that according to this math, you are fundamentally misunderstanding the geometry of the universe.
Completely misunderstanding it.
The universe is not a massive container that you are trapped inside of. The universe is a field of awareness, and you are a localized standing wave of that exact same field. The awareness you are using to look at the stars is the universe's awareness looking at itself.
You aren't small. You are the whole thing, temporarily experiencing itself from a specific localized coordinate.
That is exactly the shift in perspective the paper is pointing toward. But this brings up a huge question. If we are intrinsically connected to the whole, why do we feel so incredibly alone?
Yes.
Why did human biology evolve to hide this profound connection from us? I mean, if I am the universe, why do I feel like I'm trapped inside my head, dealing with a mountain of unread emails and anxiety?
This brings us to the concept of personal thought. We talked about universal thought initiating the Big Bang. Now we need to look at personal thought.
Okay, what is personal thought?
In the mathematical scaffolding of the paper, personal thought is introduced as another operator. Notice the difference. While universal thought birthed the macrocosmos, personal thought governs the internal evolution of your specific individualized state.
Let me translate that out of math and into English. The personal thought operator acts on my current state of consciousness and produces my next moment of subjective experience.
Precisely. It is a continuous, rapid-fire feedback loop. Moment by moment, fraction of a second by fraction of a second, personal thought is taking latent information from the universal field, filtering it through your localized structure, your biological brain, your past traumas, your memories, your sensory organs, and creating your specific subjective reality.
It is the rendering engine of my specific worldview.
Yes. And here is the double-edged sword of personal thought. It is absolutely necessary. It is what allows you to have a unique experience.
I need it to function.
Right. It allows you to learn, to love, to form an identity, to navigate a physical world without walking off a cliff. But crucially, as the paper points out, personal thought creates the illusion of separateness.
There's a figure in the paper, figure 2, that is really striking in showing this.
Yes, figure 2.
It shows the vast, undifferentiated disk of universal consciousness at the top, and then these individual localized consciousness states dropping down from it, almost like stalactites hanging from a cave roof.
A great visual.
But at the very bottom, down where the individual human nodes are interacting, they appear completely separate from each other, entirely disconnected from the source above them.
Because that is the evolutionary function of personal thought. Its job is to intensely focus your awareness on the localized experience.
If a tiger is chasing you, you cannot be contemplating your quantum entanglement with a tiger in the forest. You need to run.
Exactly. Personal thought is so heavily biased toward processing your immediate physical surroundings, your biological survival, your social status, and your individual ego, that it actively conceals the underlying unity. It functions as an evolutionary veil.
So let's map this directly onto mental health, because this is vital. If I'm feeling incredibly isolated or trapped in a severe depressive episode or having a panic attack, is that essentially my personal thought operator glitching?
That is an excellent way to diagnose it through this framework. Anxiety, detachment, and depression thrive on the bedrock belief that we are separate, vulnerable, and alone against a hostile world.
So when you are caught in a ruminative loop of depressive thoughts, or a spiraling panic attack,
Your personal thought operator is caught in a closed recursive loop. It is feeding exclusively on its own localized, fearful outputs, completely ignoring the broader field of potential. It is recursively applying negative filters to the data.
it's like looking through a microscope and forgetting that the rest of the laboratory exists. You get obsessed with the terrifying bacteria on the slide and genuinely believe that is the entire universe.
And realizing that this separation is literally an illusion, a highly convincing mathematical artifact generated by your own localized thought operator, can instantly relieve that pressure.
You are fundamentally connected. It is only the momentum of thought that tells you otherwise.
Sydney Banks used to say that we are only ever one thought away from realizing our connection to the universal mind.
In the mathematical language of this paper, you are always entangled with the infinite potential. You just have to allow the localized operator to quiet down.
To stop its frantic recursive looping long enough for you to perceive the broader field.
But this raises an incredibly important and honestly scary question. If I am just a localized cymatic pattern, a temporary standing wave in this field, what happens when the wave dissipates?
Ah, the question of death.
Yes, because existential nihilism is almost always tied directly to death anxiety, the terror of non-existence, the cold black screen. What does this physical model say about death?
If individual consciousness is a localized excitation of the foundational field, then the dissolution of that localized state, what we biologically define as death, does not equate to annihilation. The physics simply do not support non-existence.
So it doesn't mean the energy that made the cymatic pattern ceases to exist.
Right. It simply means the energy of that excitation is no longer maintaining that specific, highly constrained, localized structure.
The boundaries dissolve.
The biological anchors fail, and the excitation reintegrates back into the universal field. The fundamental awareness doesn't die. It simply ceases to be localized. It returns to the undifferentiated state of infinite potential.
So death is just the localized tension releasing, the wave settling back into the calm surface of the ocean.
Exactly.
For someone terrified of nothingness, this framework offers a completely different paradigm. You aren't being deleted. You are expanding. You are returning to the infinite potential you emerged from.
It is a profoundly comforting perspective, rooted directly in the conservation of energy and information within quantum field theory. Information cannot be destroyed.
But what I find even more compelling about Strømme's paper is that it refuses to stop at philosophical comfort. If consciousness truly is a foundational physical field, it shouldn't just be an elegant metaphor. It must interact with the physical world in measurable ways. We should be able to test it.
And we can. This is where the paper goes from theory to empirical data. This isn't just metaphysics, it's physics.
The paper outlines several potential avenues for measuring a universal field of awareness. Let's really dig into these, because if they hold up, they change everything. The first one involves interaction with the zero-point field, or ZPF.
The zero-point field is the lowest possible energy state of a quantum mechanical physical system. As we mentioned earlier, it is the fluctuating baseline of the vacuum.
Okay. And what's the prediction?
The paper's prediction is that directed mental states, highly focused localized thought, might interact directly with these quantum fluctuations.
But how? How does my brain thinking hard about something couple with microscopic vacuum energy?
It comes down to the concept of weak measurements in quantum mechanics. If consciousness is a field, localized consciousness is a concentration of that field.
Okay, track with me here.
The paper proposes that intentionality acts as a subtle measurement operator. It doesn't force a violent collapse of the wave function, but it gently biases the probabilities, those coefficients we talked about earlier.
It subtly guides the random fluctuations of the vacuum into pattern-structured outcomes.
Right.
So human intention actually altering the baseline static of the universe. That sounds like magic.
It sounds like magic until you look at the data. There is controversial yet fascinating historical data on this. The paper extensively cites the Global Consciousness Project.
Based out of Princeton University, right?
Originally, yes.
Let's talk about the GCP, because I've heard skeptics absolutely tear it apart. What exactly did they do?
The researchers set up a global network of random event generators, or RBs. These machines are essentially electronic coin flippers.
But they don't use a computer algorithm to generate random numbers, right?
Right, because algorithms aren't truly random, they use quantum noise. Specifically, they use the quantum tunneling of electrons through a barrier, which is a purely probabilistic, fundamentally random quantum event.
Pure, unfiltered quantum randomness.
Exactly. The machines spit out continuous strings of ones and zeros. Over time, the ratio should be exactly 50-50.
Because it's completely random.
Yes. But what the researchers found over decades of data collection was that during massive, emotionally charged global events that synchronize the attention of millions of humans simultaneously, like major terrorist attacks, catastrophic natural disasters, or global celebrations,
The outputs of these machines deviated significantly from chance.
the data streams stopped being perfectly random and began to show statistical structure and coherence.
Wait, I have to play devil's advocate here. Isn't that just p-hacking? I mean, if you have machines spitting out data 24/7 and you look for anomalies after a big news event happens, you're bound to find a spike somewhere just by random chance.
That is the standard skeptical pushback, and it is crucial to ask. But the methodology of the GCP accounted for that. They established their hypotheses and time windows before analyzing the data.
Well, they predicted it beforehand.
Yes. The statistical significance of the aggregate data over decades is astronomical. We are talking about multi-sigma deviations from chance. The odds of the network's overall deviation happening by pure luck are less than 1 in a trillion.
Less than 1 in a trillion. So the machines became less random when human consciousness became highly focused.
As if the collective weight of human attention was exerting a subtle gravitational pull on the quantum randomness of the electrons, it modified the probability amplitudes.
That is staggering. If consciousness is a fundamental field and a million localized excitations suddenly synchronize their focus, it stands to reason that the field would exert a measurable physical effect on other quantum systems.
We see non-classical correlations across physical matter.
And the paper proposes another testable prediction, right? Biological entanglement, testing this between human beings.
Yes. If we are all connected by this underlying field, then under the right conditions, two separated human brains should show correlated activity without any physical means of communication.
How do you test that?
The experimental setup for this involves placing two individuals in separate, heavily shielded Faraday cages.
A Faraday cage blocks all electromagnetic signals, right? No radio waves, no Wi-Fi, no traditional physical signals can pass between them.
So they're completely physically isolated. You then monitor their brainwaves with high-resolution EEGs or functional MRIs.
And what does the model predict?
The model predicts, and preliminary experiments have shown, that if these two individuals share a deep emotional bond, or if they meditate together with the intention of connecting, their brainwaves can synchronize.
Even in separate Faraday cages?
Yes. If you flashed a bright light in the eyes of one person, eliciting a specific spike in their visual cortex, the other person's brain will register a similar subtle spike at the exact same moment.
Despite being in a completely dark, shielded room, how does the non-local correlation work here? I mean, how does the information cross the Faraday cage?
Because the information doesn't have to cross the physical space. It doesn't travel through the air like a radio wave. It occurs through the underlying field of consciousness, the implicate order.
Because both individuals are excitations of the same foundational field. Changing the state of one localized node instantly correlates with the other.
Much like quantum entangled particles, the mind is literally touching another mind outside the confines of the skull.
And the paper scales this up even further, all the way to cosmology. It suggests looking at anomalies in the cosmic microwave background.
The cosmic microwave background, or CMB, is the oldest light in the universe. It is the thermal afterglow of the Big Bang, a snapshot of the universe when it was just 380,000 years old.
Standard models predict that the temperature fluctuations in the CMB should be purely random and isotropic, the same in all directions.
But they aren't.
They aren't.
No, there are highly anomalous features in the CMB. There are massive cold spots that shouldn't exist, and there is an observable hemispheric asymmetry.
A strange alignment of temperature patterns that cosmologists jokingly refer to as the axis of evil because it defies standard random models.
The purely stochastic random fluctuations of inflation struggle to explain these massive structured anomalies perfectly.
And Ströms's framework predicts that these anomalies might actually be the subtle organizing imprints of universal thought, the fingerprints of the universe deciding how to structure itself during that initial collapse from the undifferentiated state.
Exactly. If universal thought actively guided the collapse, rather than it being purely random chance, it would leave a signature of coherence. The CMB anomalies might be the macro-scale equivalent of the REG machines deviating from randomness, the foundational consciousness organizing the early universe.
If that is true, if human intention can actually influence a random number generator, or entangle with another mind, or if the very structure of the cosmos was guided by awareness, doesn't that completely permanently obliterate the idea of a meaningless life? Doesn't that mean our daily quote-unquote mundane thoughts have actual measurable physical weight in the universe?
It absolutely means that. The ultimate cure for existential nihilism is the realization of your own physical and metaphysical efficacy. Your current daily existence is deeply, profoundly meaningful because your focused intention interacts with the very fabric of reality.
You are not a passive observer strapped into a mechanical roller coaster. You are an active node in a conscious network. Every thought, every moment of awareness is an active manipulation of the underlying field.
It is.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. Let me try to synthesize the journey we've just taken, because it is a lot to hold in the mind at once. We started with that terrible late-night feeling,
Right, taking out the trash.
looking up at the sky and feeling like an isolated, vulnerable biological accident trapped in a vast, dead mechanical universe. The ultimate feeling of insignificance and depression.
But then we looked at Maria Ström's theoretical bridge.
Through the rigorous math of quantum fields, projection operators, and the philosophical lens of the three principles, mind, consciousness, and thought, we completely inverted the model. We saw that the universe isn't a dead container filled with random rocks and accidental meat computers.
The universe is a living, foundational field of pure, infinite awareness. The void is actually infinite potential.
And the creation of the structured cosmos was driven by universal thought, actively collapsing that infinite potential into the magnificent structure of space-time. And most importantly, we learned that we are not alien to this cosmic process.
We are localized excitations, cymatic standing waves, of that exact same universal consciousness field. We are the universe experiencing itself from specific localized coordinates.
It is a profound realization, and I think it captures the essence of the mathematics perfectly. But the key takeaway for you, the listener, to apply in your daily life is recognizing the function of the personal thought operator.
Yes, that is crucial. When the anxiety creeps in, when the detachment and the nihilism feel completely overwhelming and real, it is critical to remember what is physically happening. It is just your localized thought operator doing its evolutionary job a little too aggressively.
It is hyper-focusing on your separate ego, your physical boundaries, and the immediate perceived threats in your environment. And in doing so, it is actively, recursively masking the profound, unbreakable connection you have to the entire cosmos.
It is a mathematically predictable illusion of separateness. It feels real, but it is just a localized rendering error.
You are never actually separate from the source. The standing wave is never separate from the medium vibrating beneath it. You cannot be disconnected from the universe any more than a wave can be disconnected from the ocean.
Beautifully said.
That brings us to our final thought for today. A single idea for you, the listener, to carry with you as you navigate the rest of your week. Deal with your inbox and interact with the people around you. According to this rigorous physical framework, your observation, your intention, and your localized thought are the exact same fundamental mechanisms that collapse infinite potential into actual lived reality.
You are an active participant in this quantum process every single second of your life.
So the next time you feel like your life is inconsequential, the next time you are standing outside, taking out the trash, and looking up at the dark, vast expanse of the night sky, don't shrink away from it. Don't let the personal thought operator convince you that you are nothing. Recognize that dark sky as your own source, and ask yourself, is a localized, highly focused excitation of the entire universe, wielding the exact same creative power that birthed the stars, what reality are you choosing to collapse into existence right now?